We are taking chapter number 4, the making of a global world. The interwar economy. So let me tell you the summary of this, then we'll go into the details. The First World War was mainly fought in Europe, and during this period, the world experienced economic, political instability, and also the war, of course. So this First World War was fought between two parties. One were allies and the other was the opposite side, and these are called the Central Forces. These allies were Britain, France, Russia, and later joined by US. And they are up against Germany, Austria, Hungary, the Ottoman Empire, which has Turkey. So let me write Turkey. And this war lasted for 4 long years. So in this war, there were technological transformation. That is, first time the modern weapons like the machine gun, the tanks, the aircrafts, the chemical weapons, these were used in massive scale. And millions of soldiers had to be recruited from around the world, and most of them were men of working age. That is, fit men of working age. Then came the Bretton Woods Institution. We'll talk about that in a short while. So let us go into the detail. So the First World War, it was mainly fought in Europe, and the impact was felt all over the globe. And during this period, the world experienced, as I said, widespread economic, political instability, and this was a war. So it was a catastrophe. So what happened in war or wartime transformation? What changed in war? As I said, the First World War was fought between allies, two powers, allies, that is Britain, France, Russia, which was, these allies were later joined by US, and then the Central Forces, the opposite side, Germany, Austria, Hungary, and Ottoman Turkey. When it started in August 1914, this First World War, everyone thought, many governments thought that it is going to be over by Christmas, but it lasted for 4 long years. So this was the war which was never seen before. Never. Because powers were used, the destruction, everyone was enemy. Those people or those countries which were trading, they were trading friends, they became enemies. And this war was the first modern industrial war. You have to note this. This war was the first modern industrial war because machine guns were used, tanks, aircraft, chemical weapons, all were used in massive scale. To fight this war, that means they needed modern large-scale industry. Okay? Because they wanted large ships, trains. Millions of soldiers have to be recruited, and they have to be sent or transported through ships and trains. And if you see, the cause of the scale of death was immense. 9 million, or you can say 90 lakhs. 90 lakh soldiers or people died. They died simply, right? You can say dead. And 20 million injured. You can say 2 crores injured. That was unthinkable. Because what was used? Industrial arms. If industry was not being there, this many casualty no one could think of. I will show you a picture. This is a picture of workers in a ammunition or a munition factory. during the First World War. Now, the men who were killed, the number I told you, were basically the working class, working age, because they were fit, they were able-bodied. And that is why the household incomes of the countries which were involved in the war declined. After that, see, when men would go to the battle, the women would have to step out, and they took the job men would do, right? So this war, as I said, those parties which were trading, which have strong economic links, they were fighting, and they're fighting such that they just want to destroy each other. Britain, for this war, Britain has taken large sum of money from US banks, as well as the United States public. So this US is now giving debt or loan to others now. This war has created or made US like that. Now, at the end of war, you can say the US and its citizens owned more overseas assets than the foreign governments and citizens owned in the US. So now US has the power, or because of the war, the loan was taken from US and US people. Now US people have those people who have taken loan, they have to repay them. So that is how. Then the post-war recovery. War is always, it's for any party, any party who is involved, even the people who are innocent, it is dangerous. What happened after this prolonged war? The Britain was, because it was preoccupied with war, Britain was one of the party. India and Japan, these two countries, they developed themselves. And because Britain was having it has been capturing, or it has already captured the market. But after the war, this was not the case. Their dominance was difficult in the market now. Britain found it very difficult to compete with India and Japan internationally. And as I said, Britain took money from US. That is, Britain has burden of huge external debts which Britain and British people have taken for the war. Now, the war has one more side, that at that time, because everyone was fighting, so there was demand of this arms, ammunition, and so many things. So it increased the demand, production, and employment. But once the war ended, there were no requirement. The unemployment increased because production is not required. And at the same time, the government reduced bloated war expenditures to bring them into the line with peacetime revenues. And that is how there were huge losses. In 1921, in every 5 British workers, 1 in every 5, that is 1 out of 5, were jobless or out of work. So this was the post-war scenario. Everyone was anxious, uncertainty about their future. This only not happened in industries. In agriculture economies also, post-war, after the First World War, it happened. I'll take a case of wheat producers. Before the war, this Eastern Europe, it created a lot of wheat for the world market. It was actually the major supplier. But because of this war, wheat production in 3 countries, Canada, America, and Australia, it expanded. But once the war was over, what to be done? Production in Eastern Europe revived and created a glut in wheat output. That means wheat were produced in Canada, America, and Australia, and wheat was, after the war, wheat in enormous amount was also produced in Europe. So there was a surplus. Wheat was surplus. That is why when the things are surplus, the prices will come down, and the rural economies just declined or devastated, and farmers fell into deeper debts. Then the rise of mass production and consumption. In United States, nothing bad happened. They just quickly recovered. And we already saw how United States, United States, actually, they were benefited by the war. It boosted the US economy. So after some trouble, US economy revived. So it was strong again in 1920s. So it was strong again in 1920s, right? So it just recovered itself post-war, because the US also joined later in the war. Now, we need to, before we go for or understand the Great Depression, the economic slowdown which happened in 1930s, we need to understand what was the precursor, what happened previous to that. Because as I said, US recovered, so there was mass production. The mass production began in late 19th century, but in 1920s, it became a very characteristic feature of industrial production in United States. There was a person, well-known pioneer called Henry Ford. He just saw that in slaughterhouse, they use conveyor belt. That is, the butchers use conveyor belt, and on the other side of the conveyor belt, the people could take the meat. In the Chicago slaughterhouse. So he said that this assembly line, I'll just show you what is there. So the meat are cut, and every point this person is doing some work. Then there is a conveyor belt. It is going to the other person. He is doing some work. Then this is going to another person, this conveyor belt, and finally it goes to the person who has come as a consumer. So everyone was busy in their work, and the production was quite high. Henry Ford took this idea. He took this assembly line, and because he tried it for producing the vehicles, he found it very faster and cheaper way. That is, the worker has to do same work again and again. That is, putting, say, nuts on the tire, or assembling the carburetor, like this, of the car. So the work was speeding up, and those who were working here, first they were happy that things are going well, but because they are not taking break, so of course a person is doing again and again repeated work, he needs some break. And because of this assembly line introduction, Henry Ford now can manufacture one car in 3 minutes. Can you assume? Can you just believe this? In 3-minute intervals, one car was coming at that time, 1920s. So this is a T model Ford, which is mass produced using this assembly line. So the first worker, couldn't cope with this. Then he increased their wages to $5 in January 1914. And then he also banned the trade unions. And this speeding up, worker have to work harder. And the Henry Ford has a different thought about this. He says it means worker will be suffering, but they are getting money also. And he said that this is the best cost cutting decision he has ever made. Now this idea of Ford, that is called the Fordist industrial practice, this spread in US, and there was mass production in 1920s, and this spread in Europe also. So because mass production was there, the cost and prices were also less for engineered goods. Now because of the people were getting higher salaries, they can afford all these fast made products. If you see, the car production in the United States rose from 2 million to 5 million in just gap of 10 years, from 1919 to 1929. And this happened not only for car, this happened for refrigerators, washing machines, radios, gramophone players, and all these were on higher purchase basis. That is, you just give the consumer has to give just some down payment, and then he can pay the rest amount in the form of monthly installments. So everyone has it now. So this is the prosperity. This is how US became prosperous. Every house has all these things, employment, income, rising consumption demand, more investment, and more employment and incomes. So in 1923, the United States, as you saw what happened here, the United States resumed exporting the capital to the rest of the world. And now US is the largest overseas money giver lender. US imports also and these capital export, it boosted not only US economy but European recovery and world trade and income growth in the next 6 years. So from 1923 to 1929, this was a very good time for United States also and Europe also. But this has to end. In 1929, there was a Great Depression world has never experienced before. So what is this Great Depression? How it happened? You need to understand this. How did this happen? So this started around 1929 and it lasted till 1936, 1937. You can say till mid 1930s. And because of this slowdown or economic slowdown or Great Depression, whole world, they saw catastrophic decline in the production, employment, income and trade. So this, agriculture regions, communities, they were worse affected. Why? I'm talking about agriculture, right? This is because the fall in agriculture prices was greater and more prolonged than the price of industrial goods. This is the reason. So now this is, I'm talking about the agriculture field, but let us understand why this depression happened. What is the cause of this Great Depression? So it is not one cause, there are several factors. First is this, that agriculture overproduction remained a problem. That everyone was creating or producing agriculture products. But if everyone is producing, the cost will go low. If the supply is too much, then the price will go low. And when the price will go low, the farmers will not get the money they want. So they will again produce the same thing. Means if they are producing something they are not getting money, they will produce more. And the price even got down further. And you see the farm produce rotted. It was wasted. This was the first cause. Have you understood this? Let us go to the second cause. In the mid-1920s, most of the countries financed their investment from where? From United States, right? So it is very easy for them to just go to US and take the loans. But US had a depression. So what to do? Everyone was linked to United States. So in the first half of 1928, if you see the overseas loan amounted over $1 billion. But just a year later, it was just quarter of that amount, 1/4 of that amount. So now those countries which were totally dependent on the United States, they faced acute crisis. If you see, people are in line, they are all unemployed. US also did same thing, means what they did, because they wanted the loan to be taken from the other countries and the loan they have given to the people of the United States. So they have to take it back. And the United States, it tried to protect the economy in the depression. How? They doubled the import duties, which the import coming from to their country, they just double the import duty, or you can say twice the import duty they have to pay for anyone coming to US for trading. So this also created a lot of trouble for those who were dependent on the export to US. And as I said, the industrial country, US was an industrial country, and this affected United States very much, because the prices were falling and the depression was there. The US banks, which need to help, they actually started slash domestic lending, and whosoever they have given the loan, they wanted to get it back. Farms can't sell their harvest, household ruin, and business collapse. That is why those who have taken the money, how can they pay back, right? So the consumerist prosperity that we saw, that because of the production of refrigerator and cars, everyone was taking it, this just blown away. Everyone was unemployed, as I showed you the picture, right? After that, US banking also collapsed, and because it was collapsing, the bank got bankrupt. So those people who have the money in the bank, they couldn't go anywhere. As I said, let us talk in the number. By 1933, over 4,000 banks had been closed, and between this year 1929 to 1932, 110,000 companies have collapsed. After 1935, there was a modest recovery, but this Great Depression actually was great. It affected the society, politics, international relations, and also the people's mind. So India and Great Depression, what happened to India at that time? See, the depression was everywhere, so India was also got affected, but not that much. Not that much. If you see that the tremors were felt in the 19th century, colonial India had become the exporter of agricultural goods and the import of manufacturers, those things which are being manufactured. So this depression only affected the Indian trade. That is, Indian exports and imports nearly halved at that time. That is, it went down to 50%. The peasants, they suffered more than the urban one, because the urban people were getting they were salaried people, right? And those who have lended the land or some house, so they are getting money. But peasants, they suffered because the agriculture prices, they fell sharply, and the government refused to do anything for that. Peasants producing for the world market, they were worst hit, Indian peasants. Let us take an example of the jute producers of Bengal. Now these peasants, they grew jute that was processed in factories for export in the form of gunny bags. But because the gunny export collapsed, the price of raw jute crushed more than 60%. So peasants who had actually borrowed money from for this work, they got deeper into the debt. There is one more saying, the Bengal jute growers' lament was there: grow more jute, brother, with the hope of greater cash. Cost and debts of jute will make your hopes get dashed. When you have spent all your money and got the crop off the ground, traders sitting at home will pay only ₹5. Means just 5 rupees. So this happened, and as I said that India exported. It was exporting the precious material. This happened, notably the gold. There is a famous saying, or the idea of Maynard Keynes, John Maynard Keynes. He was a famous economist. He said that because of the gold exports, the global economic recovery, India helped in that. So this gold exporting actually helped the world as a whole, but not for the Indian peasants. So that is how because the rural India was not very good at that time, it was unrest. This is the time Mahatma Gandhi launched the civil disobedience movement, and this was at the height of depression in 1931. And as I said, the depression was less grim, or it less affected the urban people, urban India, the town dwelling landowners and the middle class salary employees, they had enough money and they were getting enough money. So that is how the thing didn't happen to them. So once the war has taken place, what to do next? Rebuilding a world economy. So we'll take this one in the next discussion. Till then, thank you so much and take care of yourself.